Good afternoon. Welcome to the National University Debating Championship of LLDT 5. In exhibition round, the mission for today is: this House would not allow the rich to deduct their tax for charity purposes. I am Selfie, and Iqbal will be the LO and timekeeper for this room. I'd like to read some rules. First, during the debate, please silence your mobile phone or any device that may produce disturbing sounds. Second, during the course of each speech, the audience is not allowed to come or get out or to talk. And last, for substantive speeches, the timekeeper will knock once at the minute of 4 to remind the speaker that the time is 1 minute left, and will knock twice at the minute of 5 to show that time is up. And 20 seconds after that, the timekeeper will knock continuously, and the speaker must stop the speech. Okay, without any further ado, please welcome the Prime Minister, Ms. Riri.
Understanding that in the status quo, the rich or the big company is allowed and be able to deduct their taxes for charity purposes or other noble purposes. For example, it's actually creating harms towards the nations itself, which is I'm going to describe in my arguments. Right? In government side of the house, our stance here is very clear that we will never allow the rich to deduct their taxes, even if they are doing charity or other noble purposes, in order to achieve equality amongst the company and also to achieve development towards the nations, right? In my speech, I will prove to you two things. First of all, why it's okay to ban this deductive towards the tax for their charity purposes, and second of all, why this is extremely urgent and exclusively affecting the development of these nations, right? Moving on to my first arguments of justification points of why these motions is going only to harm our nations. First of all, we need to characterize what is actually taxes proposes in our daily lives. First of all, taxes are coming for providing healthcare and also well-being to the society, right? It means that these taxes has been used for communal goods and also for to give subsidized and also to cater all layers of society, which is already being the primary objective of the government itself, right? And second of all, these taxes also coming to create infrastructure inside the nation itself, right? And also to give subsidies to other other economical sectors, for example, UMKM, right? This means that when we see the characterizations of this rich company, for example, this rich is most likely to be profit oriented, right? And when we are keep allowing them to take this for granted, it's going to only giving it's going to only being their weapons to make an excuse to deduct their taxes and also to grow their business and to build their empire, right? Even if the opposition side of the house might say that they are actually that angelic or that noble, it's still bad because the charity is like, for example, it's actually voluntary based and it's going to harm the nations as a whole, right? So moving on to my second argument of why it's actually it's actually urgent for us to not allowing the rich to deduct their taxes for charity purposes. NPOI.
Do you consider politicians also rich?
Yes. We believe that, okay, the politicians is also rich. Therefore, those kind of charity is not only, it's no longer going to be in a noble purposes, but also having interest inside that they also having interest inside the things that they do, right? And we believe that it's bad also for the nations itself, because actually, because of those politicians is also rich and also profit oriented, they will most likely to use this kind of charity to actually win the people's heart, for example, and it's going to be even more harmful in their side of the house, right? Moving on to my second argument of why it is actually urgent for us to not giving the rich this kind of privilege. First of all, we need to understand that there is a lot of things that have to be captured by these nations, right? There is a lot of infrastructure to build, subsidy, and a lot of issues that is still unsolvable in our society, right? And also to, like, for example, to pay our debt to the other nations, for example. And the highest income is only coming from these taxes itself, especially when these rich people are actually having the less amount than the other like, for example, source of taxes, right? So we believe that it's going to be harmful for a nation, because how tax works is actually trying to suit this, maybe, for example, their income, and exactly because this, like, for example, a company or these rich people having this highest income, it's also going to affecting their taxes. Their taxes is going to also having a highest rate, right? So we believe that when we are deducting this kind of taxes, it's going to significantly harm the nations. Because, like, for example, when they have 1 billion income, for example, and we're only and the taxes is only going to for like 10%, and when we are deducting this kind of taxes, it's going to also going to create, like, for example, loss towards the nations itself, right? No, sorry. So, in the opposition side of the house, the nation will going to be hampered to be developed. First of all, because like, for example, in a developing country, for example, the rich and multinational company is, and also rich people is not as much as in the developed country, right? And if we are decreasing those kind of taxes, it's going to only create unfairness towards our society. And also, we believe that the charity itself cannot replace the subsidies coming from the government, because those charities is actually coming in voluntary basis, right? So when this kind of things is actually happening in our status quo, we believe that it's not going to be sustained in the end of the day, because this kind of charity is actually having the less effective towards the government, towards the people of our nations, for instance, right? So therefore, we believe that it's going to be more beneficial on our side of the house when we are no longer giving them deductive towards their tax in the charity purposes, and we believe that it's going to create a lot more fairness in our side of the house. We beg to propose. Thanks.
Thank you for the Prime Minister. To begin the case of opposition, I would like to summon the leader of opposition, Ms. Annisa. The time is yours. Test. Check.
government side of the house stated that they brought two kinds of goals. The first one is equality. They want to create equality among the companies, and second of all, they want to avoid the harm that created by this kind of company, ladies and gentlemen. Number one, we don't think that it is create unfairness among the companies, because one, ladies and gentlemen, our clarification that the companies there are two kinds of types in this kind of debate. One, they will be doing the full tax, or second of all, the government going to deduct their tax for charity purposes, right? So this company is actually still have the capabilities and also the choice to choose what kind of tax and what kind of type of tax that they want to implement in its current status quo, right, ladies and gentlemen. So we think it has been very fair, ladies and gentlemen, and also it has been equal because the companies is actually have the rationality to choose what kind of taxes that they want to implement. Second of all, they say that it harms the nation. We think that it is very unclear what kind of harm, ladies and gentlemen. We think the charity purposes, even in under their side of the house, they agree that this kind of thing will be implemented in the forms of healthcare and also something that positively to help the society, right? So we don't think that this kind of deduction of amount of tax for charity purposes is really harm the society, ladies and gentlemen, because it's also help the society in terms of health, in terms of education, and also other sectors that actually even this kind of charity help the government. There's something that the government cannot do, right? So we think that it is not harm, it is very beneficial. By those kind of response, we have already crumbled down the goals of side of proposition. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to clarify the things that, like I have said before, that they say that we think that they say that it could create it could reduce significantly the amount of taxes, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think so, because the companies will when they don't want deduction of tax, they for charity purposes they can do the full taxes, ladies and gentlemen. So the money is still exists anyway. The money is still sustained anyway, even though, right, ladies and gentlemen, even though that all the companies choose to deduct their tax for charity purposes, we think the amount of money is actually still consists of two things, right? The first one is the tax, and also the money for charity purposes. We think that it is still sustained, that it is still help the society anyway, ladies and gentlemen. So we don't think that it could be unsustained and so on and so forth. Yes.
If the program that is being delivered by these rich people to societies is similar towards government policies, there is no significant harm or benefit at all by changing the charity purposes and reduce all of this money to go to taxes.
Okay, I will going to answer your on my arguments, right? First, as opposition, our stance that we want to remind you that the government has done this policy has been running this policy in current status quo, right? For example, the government provides tax exception for church, like, because why? Because the church actually provides the spiritual purposes that the government cannot do, ladies and gentlemen. For example, when the society face problems and so on and so forth, they could go to the church to get to peace, and also the church could help them. This is actually something that very specific and beyond the government cannot do, right? So we think the government has done this policy in current status quo, ladies and gentlemen. And also the mechanism that is very important in terms of opposition, right? We think that the deduction of tax is actually proportional with the amount of charity purposes, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that it has been proportionate anyway, and also it has been matched with which actually mutual benefits between the actors, ladies and gentlemen, between the government and also the companies and also the rich in itself, right? And also, ladies and gentlemen, we think that even if we deal with their case, right, we have to argue that, example, the taxation is ineffective, right? We have to know that the budget spending of the government, it generally comes to the general purposes, right, ladies and gentlemen. Example, like from in the form of military and also the development of spending certain long-term project, right? So we think that it never actually even though, right, we agree that it is actually also beneficial for the society, but note that when it comes to the massive infrastructure, ladies and gentlemen, it has to become in the very long time, ladies and gentlemen, and also the military, and also strengthening the military and so on and so forth, something that is actually in the majority of society still cannot benefit the impact directly, ladies and gentlemen. So we have to note that this kind of budget spending of the government is indirect and also takes a very long time. But what happened in our society, ladies and gentlemen? Sit down, sir. What happened in our society? We need the help. We need the help that the government can do. For example, we need the thing that's very fast when it comes to the urgent thing, right? So it has to also exist in current status quo when this it has to be for example, right, for the charity purposes, like Bill Gates do the charity for poor people, and also building hospital, and also education, school, scholarship, donation for natural disaster victims, ladies and gentlemen. We think we have to characterize, even though it has been existing in current status quo, but we have to note that this help is actually basically in the short time, direct, and help government in the urgent cases, ladies and gentlemen. So we don't necessarily, it is a wise thing for the proposition to actually ban this kind of policy. This is actually help the government in kind of urgent cases, right? So we, as the side of proposition, we still believe that we have to maintain this kind of policy, ladies and gentlemen. And also, we think that the concept of reward, tax breaks, and also and so on and so forth is something that normal in current status quo, right? Like I said before, when the government is actually giving tax exemption for church and something and so on and so forth, because we think that this is the reward for the things that when this individual or this rich people is able doing something that the government cannot do. And note, ladies and gentlemen, we think that it is actually wise for them to give for us to give this kind of deduction of tax, because it comes into mutual benefits. So we think it's actually at least, ladies and gentlemen, the rich is not that cruel, and because at least they are not just lobbying the government, ladies and gentlemen. So they actually give effort and also give mutual feedback to the government. So, ladies and gentlemen, we think that as opposition, we still allow the rich to deduct their tax for charity purposes to help the government. So, based on the reason, we have the unwise side of proposition, so go to side of opposition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I would like to call the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Karjongko. The floor is yours.
Mr. Speaker, we think that what we want here is that as government should be the only one that manage the tax and also manage the budget, ladies and gentlemen. We don't want that other parties can manage by themselves and ruin the plan of government to help their own societies, right? So rebuttals. In opposition side, they claim that this charity will give short benefit toward the societies. We think that what the difference between charity and also tax is that tax is an obligation, so that's why that every society should follow the rules of government. And second of all, charity is the individual interest that everyone can give what they want, for example, in the form of money or everything, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why a charity should not be counted as an obligation coming from companies or individuals, ladies and gentlemen. So an obligation should be formed of tax, and those individuals should be measured how big amount of money and in what form that those companies should follow the rules of government. No, thank you. Rebuttals. We think that when you would like to choose, for example, charity or tax, opposition claim when you use charity, it is okay compared with the tax, because at the end this will benefit societies. In that scenario, why why the government cannot handle this one when at the end the purpose only benefiting societies, right? Using the tax, the government also can give benefit towards societies. But what better in our case is that the government can make one plan that other parties cannot ruin the plan of the government, ladies and gentlemen. When there is any two parties who would like to help societies, so there will be any clash between the plan of government and also the plan of the companies, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot control the interest of companies, right? What the interest of companies is that they would like only to gain image and also benefit, ladies and gentlemen. They do not think so that what the societies need in the first place, or even that what problems that that should be solved by government in the status quo will also be thought by the companies. What companies thought is only in which place they can get the benefit, ladies and gentlemen, not in the form of government. They would like to see which one the party that most vulnerable, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that why that at the end government the only one that think their societies, because the government have the obligations to cater all the problems of societies, and the government have responsibility on that. Compared to the companies do not have any big responsibilities to give all the needs of societies. No, thank you. Okay, well, going to my cases, why that tax the company is okay, ladies and gentlemen. We think that this tax is not only going to the rich, right? Poor also get a tax, ladies and gentlemen. But what poor cannot do is that they cannot give other charities, say for example. But we think that this tax should be fair, not only just because you can give charity, you will be the government will deduct your tax, ladies and gentlemen. It is not poor, not fair to the poor, because the poor cannot do charity, so that's why they cannot allocate the money that they want, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, before I go.
We have constant view that the amount of deduction of tax proportional to the amount of charity costs, that even though there's definition either between companies and also the government, that there is a discussion anyway.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what they claim is only the amount of money will be the same, ladies and gentlemen. The question also will go to the opposition. Why, in case the amount is the same, why government cannot handle this tax, ladies and gentlemen? Why should be company, ladies and gentlemen? We think that the responsibility to cater the problems of societies is in the hand of government. Second hand of the government, yes, maybe could be the company, but company is not the one that should be responsible on this. And second of all, the company do not have that high interest to cater the problem of societies, right? So that's why we think the better management will come with the government. Second, I'm going to review what actually it is justified, ladies and gentlemen, to tax the rich, because here are the things. When you would like to give charity, meaning to say you can give this money whatever you want, right? But we think that this form of charity is not your obligation, ladies and gentlemen. Obligation is different. Say, for example, you pay tuition toward the school. So that's why the fee or this tuition, you must pay, ladies and gentlemen. But in case you would like to give, for example, a gift, for example, to the teachers, you can give it even more from this tax, ladies and gentlemen, or even more from these tuitions. But the thing is that the tax should be the same, and even if you want to give the charity, you can do anyway, ladies and gentlemen. So in your proposal, in our proposal, that we think every people still can give this charity, but they also need to pay the tax, ladies and gentlemen. Next of all, why that it is okay to tax the rich? Because the rich is that the only one that I would say give the highest benefit compared to other societies, that they can get more financial or benefit in terms of financial compared to the poor, ladies and gentlemen. That's why that when we tax more, say for example, from the rich, it is okay, ladies and gentlemen. And next of all, the parameter of the tax deduction should not be in terms of the charity, but only in terms of your income, ladies and gentlemen. In case your income higher, so that's why your tax should be higher. But once your income lower, your tax will be lower, ladies and gentlemen. The problem of opposition is that they only how to say difficult to think that which one that should be allocated this budget or this type. Either the companies or also government, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that the amount is the same, so that's why not goes to government. Second of all, I'm going to give you why that minimizing the disparity and empower societies will be there, ladies and gentlemen. First, that the companies, when they would like to give charity, they can do so, ladies and gentlemen. Second, but the government have more power or coming from these tax, right? So that's why that this tax and this charity will be allocated toward poor societies that giving training, for example, or giving training, education, or whatever the government can empower societies. That's why the better educations and skill coming from the societies, they will be more independent, ladies and gentlemen. They can be more powerful in terms of economy and creating their own economies, for example. So that's why this also will help benefit societies and also even benefit the companies, because companies also can get better workers. That's why we beg to propose this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. To respond to the case, I like to call the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Mr. Zuhdi. Zuhdi, the floor is yours.
About two issues in my speech. First, I'm going to talk about the principle of tax exemption, why this is justified. Second, I'm going to talk about taking the best case scenario of the government team. If the company is that pragmatic, what is their behavior if we don't give them tax exemption? I think they're going to be more aggressive, and I'm going to explain it in my second issue. But first of all, discussing about principle of tax exemption. My first leader already told you that tax exemption is given by the government towards individuals that already contribute to the society, in which that contribution cannot be done and cannot be replaced by the government, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens when we give tax exemption towards religious organization, because they provide the spiritual salvation for the people, something that government cannot do. We think that this is the same case, this is the parallel example that can be applied towards these rich people in giving charity. Because we thought that the nature of the company in giving charity, in giving contribution, is highly different towards what the government is doing. Government is more likely to build project that is having long-term and distant relationship with the society, building a massive amount of infrastructure that can only be reap the benefit in the next 10 years, or spending in the military that has no direct contribution with the people. It's the amount of benefit is speculative by the government in most of the cases. This is likely because the government is pushed to be creating the long-term vision when they are being asked in the parliament, for example. So they are more likely to be more long-term and distant. We think that in company, they are more likely to be short-term and more direct benefit towards the people. Exactly taking the characterization when they just want to get this high amount of publicity, they are going to be perceived as benevolent by society. It means they want to give this contribution to the society in things that is more relatable, things that is more direct to the society. Because now they can advertise it to the public that I am a benevolent company, that I can actually contribute, and this is something that is beneficial, ladies and gentlemen. Things like building shelter, contributing in natural disaster event, or like giving and providing educational institution that is fast in terms of its project, ladies and gentlemen. Even for the PR stand, we think that it is okay, ladies and gentlemen, because this short-term benefit is something that the government cannot do. We think that it already responds to their argument that it will ruin the government plan, because they never characterize why is the government plan is always the best for the society, because sometimes the government is not giving the direct benefit for the people, right? But we don't have the burden to say that company is better in managing this budget of the country. But we told you that by the virtue of, in most of the cases, they provide this short-term benefit, direct benefit to the society. It is something that the government cannot do, because government have more priorities than the company. That is, in general, exactly we need to attract these companies to actually contribute, because otherwise, exactly they are profit-oriented, they cannot do contribution because of that. No, thank you. We told you that in our sub the house, the amount of tax deduction will be proportional to the amount of benefit that is given to the society, right? So the amount of money will not be the problem to begin with, right? But in regards to the idea of equality, we have three responses for this. We think that we don't give tax exemption towards poor people when they donate, because most likely they don't donate because they have no disposable income to donate. They just won't prioritize themselves because they are more likely to be poor. But second of all, in terms of the scale, more likely rich people give more donation towards poor people, so we don't give tax exemption to the poor people. I think it is something that justified. But thirdly, and most importantly, we think that by the virtue we give them tax exemption, it doesn't negate the fact that the amount of contribution that they give to the society is still massive. Things like giving employment to the society, attracting more FDIs by creating more infrastructure, more buildings in companies, so more FDIs come. Building infrastructure, it means that there is spillover benefit in the absence of we tax them, we give tax deduction. We think that is something that justified. I'm going to take closing.
Most of your argumentation is to say companies have a lot of benefits. Are you going to clear out all taxes simply because they have a lot of benefits?
No, ladies and gentlemen, we're not going to clear out this amount of benefits. What we want to define is it is okay to lower down the amount of tax towards the company, because in my second issue, I'm going to tell you the comparative of that POI is something that is highly problematic. Ladies and gentlemen, the governments of the house might fear that company will obey to not deduct their tax the moment we don't deduct, the moment we implement this policy. But there are many scenarios that company would do the moment we don't exempt their tax, because we think that owners of the house, their tax will be overwhelmingly high. It is in our worst case scenario, in the event where this amount of tax deduction is not proportional to the amount of contribution to the society. Even if closing government would tell you that in numbers the amount of contribution that company give to society is lower and they manipulate with the amount of numbers, we think that even if the amount of benefit that they give to our society, that's their charity, I think it's still okay to be defended in the case of opposition. Because we are going to tell you that what happened when you put so much overwhelmingly high taxes towards this company, they will react in 4 ways that is destructive towards the government policy. First, they will lobby the government to lower down the tax by enacting another tax breaks policy, ladies and gentlemen. We think that is something that is likely. Even if you cannot buy that, the second scenario is they will create an offshore companies in countries in which they have low amount of tax. Countries like Panama, countries in these Caribbean countries where they have to pay tax at all, something that they already do in status quo right now. Third of all, they might leave this country. We are going to have this capital flight, especially in the developing countries. This is something that is so dangerous, because we need these companies' existence, gentlemen. Even if they don't pay tax, but they still provide employment, they still create infrastructure. I think it is something that should be defended, ladies and gentlemen. In our of the house, even if they quote unquote evade the tax, it is okay, but at least they stay in this country, gentlemen. No, thank you. But first of all, they might do things that cut their production costs, but harming the employees, harming the society. Things like going to automation, laying down more workers, increase the price of their goods, or do these kind of things, because now they have to be burdened by paying so much tax. But I think this is something that is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. Why this analysis is important? Because we told you we are not arguing in the basis of the benevolence of the company. Even if company is pragmatic, there is a lesser evil choice that we should take. But second of all, we think that we told you even if the amount of the benefit and charity that is given by the company is lower, I think it is still better because they still stay in this company. But thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, the comparative is not like what opening government has told you, in which the government have more ability to create more infrastructure, to create more subsidy. The comparative is this company leave, you will have more employment. You don't have companies that will produce this kind of infrastructure and employment for society, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. So we told you, in principle, we are going to still create benefit that the government cannot replace. But even if you cannot buy that principal argument, more importantly, we already analyzed the profit incentive structure of this company. They're going to be more aggressive the moment you put these redistributive taxes. Vote for the O.
Thank you, Mr. Zuhdi. To start with closing half, please welcome the Member of Government, Ms. Afkari. The floor is yours. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we see that charity is actually good, but we think it is not exactly so. But we think it is not actually effective. So why it is not effective? Wait, I will explain it later. First of all, going to my first rebuttal that stated by the OO. The OO stated that it is actually the government seems like giving like a high taxes towards this company, while actually in the current status quo, the government itself is already have like some have like regulations. So like if you have a certain income, then you will have this amount of tax, for example. So it is like government already like give like a fair regulation towards this company, and then you know what? So they think it is actually those kind of high tax. Their assumption that actually high taxes is actually burdening the company is not valid, ladies and gentlemen. Second of the rebuttal, they also stated that government only have like a long term only give the people the long term like facilitation and something like that. But we see that right now they also do direct impact to the society, like for example like some health injection that already we feel when we were like in elementary school and stuff. Even if the government itself have like a long term vision of something like that, we think it is still okay, because it is like still for the good of the people. So we think it is no problem for them. Also, they stated that it is actually the amount of money is not important. If the amount of money is not important, so we think that it will be better if the company give all of the money to contribute to the tax, because the government is somebody said the government will actually the one who can who can actually have a lot more fair regulation at the end of the day. Why is that? So I will explain that now. First, wait a minute. Now first, why is this? Why we think that actually charity is not effective? First of all, charity at this very moment is not it's not let's say it's not compatible with the current condition. Why is that? So like for example, like first of all, we already know that companies has their own interest. First of all, they want to get profit. Second of all, they want to be like labeled as a good company. So for example, like what happened in a lot of African countries, where one day Mark Zuckerberg give all of these people the computer so that they can access a lot more internet. But what they actually need is food, for example, something like that. It is actually a proof to you that actually most of the like right now charity itself is not doing rightly by all of those rich people, all of this company. And then second of all, why we think that tax is actually better. So okay, first of all, tax besides it's also a form of obligation. Tax itself is also a responsibility of people or a company as a return for government for giving like safety in making their business, or safety in their life, and so on, so on. And then and then at the end of the day, those tax will like give back to the society. And this tax is actually regulated by the government. And if the government is the one who are like the agent of protection and the one who actually have responsibility to regulate all of this money in order to to spread the welfare towards all of the people. So even if like for example the government are not responsible for this money, when it was responsible for this money, the government still have like check and balance. So like the society, when the government give you some policy and then it is not good for you, the society will have like the protest for the government. So it's like at that moment when you will tell the government what is actually you need, and then the government will directly they can like have regulation to actually manage those money to what actually you need, you know. So the only one who have this kind of, you know, system is actually only the government. For if you go to the company or the rich people, for example, like take the case of Mark Zuckerberg again. For example, will you like even if like you are protesting to the Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have any, you know, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have any responsibility to like make it like better, make this computer change become like rice or other food, for example. So it's actually the one who have that, the one way is that the government is the one who actually the most effective who can spread the welfare towards society, is because that one you can, you have like check and balance to that you can give to the government. Second of all, why is government are the one who actually have like a helicopter vision? So he's the one who like the most understand is people what actually they need, and it is also why tax is better, because at the end of the day, the one who feel like benefit from this tax is actually all the people, not necessarily a certain people. So when you give the money to the government will regulate it, and then the government will like give these people, for example, the people in the is part of the country need water, for example, and then you know, west part of the country need, for example, food, but he will like you know, like distribute it. But once the company give you like once the company that offers that they only give those kind of, you know, this kind of effect only to a certain community, and it is at the end of the day will not, you know, beneficial in. We are talking about the whole country, and if you only talking about some company or rich people, they only give some benefit to some certain small community, and it will not effective if all of our goal is actually to spread the welfare towards our people. So we raise our case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Afkari, for your time. To respond to the case of government bench, I would like to summon the member of opposition, Ms. Chintya. The time is yours.
First of all, I would like to continue our further debate here by giving 3 rebuttals toward the other team. Firstly, I would like to begin my first rebuttal. That is, the opposing government have said to us that by implementing this motion, it can also increasing this improvement of infrastructures nation. But ladies and gentlemen, in our point of view, we can say that this is right, but at the same time, this is also wrong. Why is that so, ladies and gentlemen? First is that infrastructure growth improve doesn't mean guarantee creates prosperity among the citizens. Meaning that when our nation creates another infrastructure, it doesn't mean these kinds of infrastructure answers the needs of our citizens. And the further expansion I would like to give to all of you, I would like to explain it later in my argument. No, thank you. And then I would like to move on toward the second argument, that is the closing team have said that government have a lot more authority in helping people. But ladies and gentlemen, we can say again and again, this is very wrong of the actor to be done. Why is that so? First thing first, I would like to give you a kind of scenario, which is, just imagine if there is a disaster happen. Well, government have many kinds of things that they should take care, like for example, education, healthcare, or even crimes and etc. Just imagine if this government taking care or handling this disaster
they cannot focus at all. They cannot focus at the fullest, just because basically any kinds of governments in this world have many kinds of things to be done. Therefore, we can say that this charity is more deserved actor to taking care of these kinds of disasters, because if we are letting this charity to taking care of this, wait for a moment, when this charity taking care of this kind of disaster, taking care of the disaster, meaning that this charity will know about how these people need most. And before that, I will take the opening.
By not giving tax deduction, companies still can give their charity. Second of all, the government still get more tax.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I will answer that later. And then, last but not least, I would like to give the last rebuttal, that is, companies allocate the money to charity for only making image. Well, we do agree that not everyone do it by genuinely or even sincerity, but in our opinion, as long as these kinds of companies doing what they have done toward the charity, if this amount of money can become a meaningful help for those who get those kind of money, then it is okay for us to let it go. Okay, I would like to move on toward my only argument. No, thank you. That is, my only argument is that tax system in status quo is already fair. Why is that so? First is that I would like to explain what is the purpose of tax for ladies and gentlemen. Well, purpose of tax is to create prosperity among our nation equally. Why this equally have to be implemented, ladies and gentlemen? Well, let's take a look at the status quo right now. The purpose of tax is already violated, ladies and gentlemen. For example, in our country that we currently live in, that is Indonesia, this state allocated and or even using amount of their tax from their citizens only for their own interest of the majority people, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I would like to give an example, a real example, that is in Papua. In era Jokowi, there are many kinds of bridges that are already built in order to connect to another island, in order to make the price of the foods and ingredients to become more lower. But the big question is here: does Papua people really need those kinds of things? Well, even if Papua also have a taste of advantage of these kinds of infrastructures that is being built by this government, there are still many things that do not being granted by the state itself. Like, for example, education, healthcare, and etc. Well, these kinds of aspects that I already stated to all of you before, it is not still being granted at all. Why? Because like I have said to you before, that this nation tend to look about to fulfill the interest of the majority instead of minority. Therefore, we can say that this purpose of tax itself is already violated. That the tax itself should be used for all kinds of people, right? It's not only for the majority people itself, but also the minority people itself. And then we can also say that we can let this rich people person to deduct their tax for charity purpose. Why is that so? First of all, first thing first is that they also have the same fundamental purpose at the end of the day. Why is that so? That I would like to define that this charity is the real purpose of the charity itself is to make prosperity born in people, especially in poor people. And second of all, tax is also like that. That is to make prosperity born in people, especially in people, especially for poor people. Therefore, if we are letting this the other team to granted their proposal, it means that we will violate this fundamental of purposes of tax and also charity tax itself. Why is that so? Because like I have said to you before, that this tax in their proposal, this tax doesn't fulfill their main role, that is to make prosperity in poor people. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now to close the case of government bans, I would like to summon Government Whip, Mr. Sandi. The floor is yours.
Yang HP-nya dimatiin. HP-nya jangan deket. Tes. Panels, I think providing lesser evil choice does not erase the evil and does not erase the necessities for you to eradicating that evil. Because if companies is very evil, like opening opposition says, most of the times they run away to other countries regardless of the proposals. They try to lobby government regardless of the proposals anyway. The question is not whether companies will do this or not. The question is, how do we prevent companies actually doing a lot of bad things that is happening right now? We argue as closing government, the reasons why these things happen is because government is powerless. It's because government does not have any money. This is why they need to succumb towards companies. This is why they not protect their levers. This is why they need to allow companies to stealing our monies and go to Panama, for example. This is the type of things that opening oppositions forgets. Just because that you allow companies to do charities, that does not mean that the problem is going to be solved. On our house, you have tons of money to eradicate this maleficent intention that comes from companies. Why is that likely and why is that good? Because just because you give them taxes does not mean that companies is still going to just go away from their countries. Understand, developing countries is not a replaceable market due to our growth, due to our natural resources, due to our employment, due to our cheap labor. Most likely they're going to stay. We are very willing to propose this in a global scale. So regardless of you escaping from Indonesia and go to Malaysia, you're still going to benefit developing countries anyway. So what is the debate? We think that the debate relies on two things. One of the principal behaviors on what is taxes, and I think that no things in opening half and closing opposition able to define this. Second one, I'm also going to talk about the pragmatic approach, something that what OO and CO wants to talk. First thing, I think that taxes are inherently different than any other type of tax exemptions or any other type of charity. The reasons why we have taxes is a form of compensations towards the inherent natures of individuals, right? This is why the taxes for rich people are different than the taxes for poor people. I agree, this is example coming from opening government, but the explanation is because rich people have taken a lot of natural resources and exploit our lands, and this is why they need to compensate it to a higher amount of taxes in comparison to any other states. We think that this is particularly important. How do they do that? How do the rich people exploit us? They do this by exploiting our cheap labor for their own profit. They hoard essentially all wealth and centralize development only to Jakarta, Bandung, or in US, New York, rather than going to states like Papua. They do this, for example, by lobbying government exactly like Zuhdi tries to oppose. The problem with this is because all of this harm is not going to be paid if you're going to go to charity rather than to go towards taxes. Why is that the case? The reasons why is because one, charity are inherently specific help that comes from one particular problem and not goes another part. We agree, government will make infrastructure and subsidy. The reasons why that is important because the benefit of this infrastructure and subsidy can be used and can be enjoyed by all, rather than on their side, most likely the benefit that charity gives is only towards specific individuals like scholarship individuals or people like if you're Sampurna or smoking companies or smoking cigarette companies, most of the times you're only going to pay or do charity to people who can be an employee at the end of the year, or for example can benefit your companies. This is why it's matterful that you need to give these taxes towards government, because what company owes is not to specific individuals who can become their employees, but towards the majority of societies that they're going to leave behind. This is why on the principle levels we're going to win. Why is this important and why is this principle important? Because I think Zuhdi analyzed it perfectly. That is a principle concession. We never give tax on the basis of benefit. This is why regardless of the benefit that existed within companies, they're still going to tax them anyway, not totally eradicate the taxes. So that means taxes are necessary, right? The principal behaviors behind that is which one are we going to benefit from these taxes? Are we going to allow the freedom to choose one specific individuals, but are we going to force companies to benefit all the majority of societies at the end of the day? The second thing that I'm going to propose to you, any POIs? The second thing that I'm going to propose to you is a pragmatic approach and why we think that is going to be better. I think opening government did a good job by establishing that profit-oriented companies is going to exist. But I think the debate needs to be more realistic, right? Government is also profit-oriented, but the way that government allows and gathers profit is by gathering votes and gathering the support of the people. And I think that's a much more easier way for us to check and balance this. I'm going to talk about this in two layers. First, I'm going to talk about companies. Second, I'm going to talk about why government are better. Let's talk about companies. Look, closing government in my member speech, in our member speech, elaborate to you that companies are inherently not good. Because right now, the entire benefit of opposition can only arise if the charity is meaningful and is helping people. If we can prove to you that these charities are useless and unnecessary, we take this debate. Why do we think charity that is being given by companies are inherently unnecessary? There are three reasons why. Why? Well, one. Sure. Before that, yeah.
There is a law that regulates and to protect the labor exploitation and natural resources exploitation. And why so wrong when the company obeys the tax even though it's deducted and charity at the same time?
Because you're breaking one rules and just to divert to breaking another rules at the end of the day. If you want to have labor regulations, the prerequisite is for you to have money, and money can only happen when you have taxes. The second reason that is contradictory towards your DLO argumentation regarding labor exploitation and etc. That means that already argumentation coming from open opposition, it cannot be counted into debate. We think that these reasons why rich people are inherently charity is unnecessary is because of three reasons. One, most likely the charity is a form of philanthropic actions like what Mark Zuckerberg did in Africa. So right now, even if the African people needs our food, they give them computers and internet for them to access Facebook, because if they access Facebook, they can actually get tons of money from advertisement, etc. We think that this is particularly important because regardless of how much amount of money that you give to those African people, but when they want to eat, what you give them, Facebook, is worthless. The second thing is that what happens is marketing and short-term benefit, engaging to opening opposition, is not something that we want to have in the current conditions. Why? Because short-term inherently does not solve the root problems or does not solve the reasons why we have these problems to begin with. Things like giving subsidy does not solve the problem of educational leverage that has been going on in Indonesia, does not solve the inequality that is happening within the rich and the poor. We think this is why long-term is necessary. The comparison that exists in government is not we only have long-term. In a government, you can have short-term policies because we want to also be seen as benevolent towards individuals. This is why even Jokowi, even though they have massive amount of infrastructure, also gives several amount of subsidy and also gives several amounts of money towards minorities. Right? The question is this: on the other house, you have the flexibilities for short-term and long-term. We propose to you that long-term policies is inherently important for you to tackle down the root problem that does not exist in companies and that does not protect individuals. We agree Papua is important. The question is, why would company goes to Papua if they can only exploit these individuals? We are very proud, sure, to propose.
Okay, thank you very much. To close the debate, I summon the opening whip, Mr. Hendra. The floor is yours.
Mr. Speaker, I think this debate cannot be on the government side, since they cannot fight via the idea of utilitarianism. You cannot say that government is that benevolence and all the purpose of government it's only to benefit the communal benefit, as well as you say that company is very evil to begin with, and it's something that is inherently bad. We think that this is not the debate about that. This is a debate about the proportionate amount of benefit that you could give as a contributions toward the minority on all the people that are necessary in order for them to prosper. We think that all the governments rely on basis of utilitarianism, right? Because none of them explain the worst case of the government, in which they also have the interest in order to prosper several things. Things like centralized developments that currently exist in Indonesia. All that things are matter if you're talking about developments. None of them talking about a proportionate amount of distributions that government have. We think this is something that's regrettable. No. Second things, all my rebuttals will be integrated to my class, right? But first of all, let's kick off opening governments. Because specifically, opening government talks on the worst case where a company is so bad and the government is so good to begin with. If they want to say that, you want to say that company could give the charity without deductions, it also apply the same logic with the idea of having the proper amount of taxation system without a significant amount of contribution from company tax to begin with, because none of them explain how the taxation works. Maybe because they are not economic measure. First of all, when it talks about taxations, this is something that is inherently is an obligation of governments, right? It is, the word is deductions. It means that the company is also obliged to give a certain amount of contributions. It is forms of tax. It also could be given. The problem is that we cannot agree with the idea of this appreciate the contributions from the company by wanting to give the genuine form of action with this charity itself. If opposition talks about how charity itself is a form of short-term contributions, we think it is something that is not really good, because we believe it could go more, because as Sandy said that short-term and long-term is also applied in governments, we think that it is also applied to companies. That is to say that the form of charity is not simply because of disaster. It is not simply because Africa is still poor, but it's given because they wanted to give a progressive amount of image that we are wanting to be built upon the company itself. This is something that never actually opening all the branches of governments engage with our case. We cannot show, because we cannot show the absolute progress of life. We cannot show that poor people suddenly become rich. But we could say that progressive equality, that is the main purpose of the charity itself. And it is worth to pursue. Why? My member explicitly say that the current taxation system has failed in order to prosper the society and give a direct contributions and distribute amount of welfare. And this is something that closing opposition takes, right? Because the idea of philanthropic actions relies on genuine form of characterizations. This is something that needs to appreciate to begin with. At the worst case, let's say opening opposition say it's going to be aggressive, but more on how the society itself as general demand the sense of appreciation from government, not only for the poor people, but for the actions that are given to the rich itself. Because, yes.
Don't you think companies will have more benefits when Papua is still a rural areas? Understand that they have lower minimum wage, have natural resources able to monopolize, rather than actually developing Papua for marketing?
No, we reject that premise. We think that at the worst of objectification from governments, objectification that point out by government, at least these people have a job. Yes, continue that in my second discussion is the model of government only objectifying the company for the failure of the taxation itself. Why this is the case? Because most of the times the government itself avoid the idea of re-evaluation the system of tax, the re-evaluation the system of distribution of welfare itself. This is something that is wrong in the current government system, and this motion only gives the alternative to the governments to give them escape mechanism for being responsible for their own obligations, as opening government mentioned, social contract. We think that this is something that we need to point out, right? Because the charity that given by the company is not a random charity. When you see a poor people, you give them money. This is something, this is not like the case of Africa when they need food and you give them Facebook. This is something that, this is the amount of data that accumulated by this company, in order to give a direct and targeted market to begin with. We cannot simply dismiss the idea of how the company itself are the one who have the proper amount of human resources in order to direct it a certain amount of welfare that this government didn't have, because realize that the government itself is rigid to begin with. It is something that is never talks in a government side, which is the government of, for example, Indonesia, have a certain amount of APBD in order to accumulate a certain program to begin with. This is and also as a sense of closing oppositions, we are more than proud to say that the amount of charity is a form of flexibility that could prosper, that could adapt with the certain situations that is important for the status quo. For example, if in current status quo, the African people are handled by Facebook, that's to say Google is not going to help that particular area anymore, which is in that specific cases, there will be competitions in giving charity to, for examples. But we think this amount of competition is something that is good, because since the very first place, oppositions propose the idea of pragmatic benefit that is more likely to give a direct and significant contribution to society. We think it's justified for this company to be given tax deductions. We are very proud to oppose.
Okay, now the exhibition round is ended. Thank you so much for all the debaters.